All right, we're back. We're back. This might be segment 2 or edition 2, episode 2.
Who
I don't
knows?
know which one it is, but if you missed the first two, you better go back and watch them. This is Everybody's Talking with Kevin Derryberry, and we're a Seraphic Sound Studio podcast. It's kind of a video cast, I guess.
Yeah, sure it is. Nothing
What do you
wrong with that.
call this stuff?
Well, we do one too. I mean, you got to have the video, you got to have the audio, you got to have it
Yeah.
all. And you
And
remember the
you,
first time you heard the word podcast? I was like, "What are y'all talking about?"
I thought that was some kind of alien thing.
I did too.
Yeah,
I
and you
once told
recognize this guy. This is Rick Burgess from the Rick and Bubba Show. He's my special guest, my special friend. We're having a good time. We just turn the mic on and off, and he just keeps going. I love it. That's the thing I realized about y'all's show.
Yeah,
Is y'all just talk.
that's all we do.
And the funniest thing is watching Speedy try to say, save that for the show, and y'all just rattling off stuff that
It's a stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
It really is just talking about whatever. I think the show kind of became. I remember trying to figure it out when I was in radio. Kind of like we were talking about in one of the segments about the music stuff. You try to figure out who you are.
Yeah.
What do I bring? So I tried the doing a fake voice and this hot rockin' DJ kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then when I first started doing mornings, I thought I had been demoted. I didn't know that people listened to radio in the morning, and I was told that I was being promoted. I said, "This doesn't feel like a
Prime
promotion."
time, ain't it?
I said, "Who listens to the radio in the morning?" And they said, "Normal people."
Everybody but you.
Yeah,
Apparently.
right. Well, Kevin. Now this again, BC before Christ.
Yeah.
I had, for the kind of person, which I'm glad I'm not that person anymore, to have a job that said get here about lunch, record some commercials, then go on the air about 3, and work till 7, and then you're free again.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, why would I want to change that gig? And but they informed me that it wouldn't. I didn't have
That
a choice.
wasn't normal.
Yeah, and so I was doing the morning thing, but I was like, I got to figure out how to make this show work. And I remember sitting at my house out on the deck like Southerners do, or on the porch, and everybody's laughing. You've been there.
Yeah.
I'm like, where's all this laughter coming from? And I realized it was coming from fill in the blank. Uncle so-and-so says, now y'all ain't going to believe what happened to me at Walmart.
Yeah.
And then whatever, or that. And then now we were out the ball field and da-da-da-da-da. And I went down to the DMV and da-da-da. And people were just roaring, hey, it worked today. And I said, all right, that's it.
That's the story.
You just sit here and talk about life and talk about what's going on. That's where the humor is. Mickey Dean, who's passed away, great comedian, he said it best. He said, Southerners don't write comedy, they report comedy. You just report it. It's everywhere. And so that kind of changed the dynamic of how we approached it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you look around, there's enough stories, and there's enough things going on. And that's what y'all do. Y'all just talk about life, things that happen.
Yes.
I love it when y'all go on vacation and come back and talk about where you've been, what happened.
See, that's what I'm talking about. There's that stuff again. You won't believe what happened at the airport. And,
the catastrophes.
All those family trips that you think are so perfect, and they turn into just complete disasters.
And it's everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody does that.
Everybody goes through
and they're finally hearing somebody talk about it.
Yeah. Well, that was it, because I started out doing radio. I told you it was kind of running along with the band thing. Football ended for me, after my first year of college football. I just lost my desire for it, and I left football, got in the bands, then worked my way into piddling with the radio, and then I was doing the band and the radio, and then the band thing kind of fades away, and the radio thing starts taking prominence. So I started out, as just a DJ, doing afternoon drive or nighttime, and I learned that at the campus radio station where I met you. When you guys would come to play at the college bar, you'd go over to the college radio station and we'd promote it, and you and I met there, and I had a great time promoting you guys. And then I'd come over, and see y'all play, and so I started out doing the show by myself, and even when I went into mornings, it was the morning extravaganza, and it was just me.
And it was still campus.
And then I transitioned into my first AM local radio station gig, doing weekends.
Right.
Don't talk, just play the programs.
Right.
All the syndicated stuff, and then I got I got a yeah, reel to reel. Then I got a job. Then I remember playing Paul Harvey. Rest of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Paul Harvey news and
I
commentary.
mean, that was good stuff.
Oh, and on Sunday morning the Baptist hour. Do you
Come
remember
on.
that? And what was the other power? The Power Hour or Power
or seed for the sower.
something like that.
Power Hour.
Yeah, yeah. And so anyway, well then they asked me to do afternoons on the local radio station. So that's where I came up with this extravaganza thing because I was being a smart aleck. They gave me like the prizes I had to give away, and it was a bunch of junk.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll tell you, we're giving away today a discount over to Weaver Fabric. I'll tell you what this is an extravaganza, and yeah. So anyway, and then I did that, and then I moved from that station to my first FM gig. But you know what helped me the most doing what I do now for a living radio-wise?
What's that?
The AM station had a legendary announcer that did a 2-hour talk show in the middle of the morning called On the Air. Hello, you're on the air.
Yeah.
And people would call up and talk about politics, or they'd call up and talk about their garden,
Yeah.
or they call up and talk about their dog, or they call up and talk about, what you wouldn't believe what happened over at the restaurant at Betty's Barbecue. And that guy died. And they had all kinds of revenue, live commercials. Think about how much this helped me for what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Tied up in the show, and they're like, we got to find somebody to do this show.
Come on.
And I just raised my hand sitting over at 24, and I said, I'll do it. They're like, you're too young to do On the Air. And I'm like, who's going to know? And so I went on the air, and so there I learned that I had to create content live on the air, no music, no anything.
Right.
Now, I left that and started DJing again and became an FM music disc jockey.
Right.
But that little moment in there prepared me for what was going to be ahead.
Yeah.
And so I was doing afternoons at a station, and I got a call from Bill Bussey.
Bill Bussey. That
Bill
name's
Bussey.
familiar.
Now, Bill Bussey, I had met in college, and he and I had Spanish class together when we were both trying to learn communication degrees. And we were so bad at Spanish that our teacher had fled Castro. And she said that we frustrated her so much, she was considering going back to Castro. And so did you know, listen, her name was Teresa Succo.
Okay.
Now look, here's an exclusive
All right, come on.
for this podcast.
All right.
She has a policy. She will not speak of Rick and Bubba.
Ever.
Because she's been interviewed, or attempts to be interviewed, because every time I tell the story, if people are doing an expose on the show, they'll try to call and interview her. So I remember the last time a TV station tried to do a story on our show, the reporter comes back and says, we attempted to contact Teresa Succo, but she now has a policy that she will not be interviewed about Rick and Bubba. So anyway, so I remembered being in that class with him.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm an engineer, because he wasn't going into On the Air. He was
Right.
going to be a radio engineer.
Yeah.
That's how he made a living. And he said, I'm engineering up here at Q104. Do you remember you talking about the Southern
Yeah.
Supergiant?
Yeah.
And he said, they need a morning man, and I've told them they need to hire you. And he had called and tried to hire me at another station that he was a co-owner of for a while, and I turned him down. And he said I was asking for too much money. He said that was a trait in me that he grew to love, though, in the future.
Yeah.
So anyway,
he appreciates that. Now, doesn't
so
he?
anyway, he said, you need to come up here. And at first I turned him down. And I said, I think I'm going to stay where I'm at. So my dad was coaching for the national championship at Jacksonville State University.
Yeah.
And I was told by the station I was working at that I could not go to the game because I had to do a live remote somewhere.
Oh.
And I said, well, man, I've been with y'all from the very beginning, which the station signed on the air, and I was one of the first DJs they ever had. And I said, I've been here 3 years, busting my tail. I just want to take a Saturday off
Yeah.
to go see my dad coach. And they said, I'm sorry, if you go, they won't buy the remote. And I said, well, my dad taught me, you're the boss. I don't want to cost y'all money, so I guess I'll miss the game. Well, I get to the remote, and the guy walks out. It was Cellular One. I'll never forget this. And the guy walks out, and he said, man, what are you doing here? I thought you'd be at the ball game. And I said, well, I'm here because you booked this remote,
Whoa.
and I was told that if I didn't do it, you wouldn't buy it. He said, no, I'm glad you're here, and I would have preferred you, but this is co-op money. I was going to spend it either way. I said, so anybody could have done this remote, and you still would have bought it? He said, yeah. So I knew they lied to me. They didn't even call and ask him. So then I go home, and of course Jacksonville State wins the national championship.
Oh,
Now
man.
don't miss that we had played for it 2 times prior and lost.
Yeah. You were at both of those.
I was at both of those.
Oh, man.
So I missed the win, and my family is celebrating in the middle of the field. And of course, Bubba, of course, he was just Bill Bussey then. Of course, Bussey had the first cellular telephone that Calhoun County had ever had.
Of course he did.
And he calls from the 50-yard line with my parents, puts me on the phone with them, and just before he hangs up, brilliantly, he says, you know, if you'd have taken that job at Q104, you would have been here. And so I went and told the station I was leaving.
Wow.
And I went to Q104, and I got there where he was the engineer, was doing mornings, and one day he walks down the hall or he's working on something. I'm dying in there. This station had fallen into terrible – it didn't have any listeners. They were trying to build it back. And this is when country FMs had come in and devoured up all the top 40 stations. And he walked, and I said, hey, man, come in here. I said, let me talk to you or something.
Yeah.
And he comes in there, and I said, well, here's the station engineer. And I said, Bill, and I said, you know, you remind me of everybody's Uncle Bubba. Everybody in Alabama has an Uncle Bubba. I said, Bill Bubba Bussey is the engineer. And he starts talking to me on the air, and we're cutting up. So we're at lunch one day, and I said, and he and I were talking, and there was this magazine that had all these different ideas for radio promotions. And there was something in there about guessing Shakespeare. And Bubba said, hey, this will be funny. You just need to do Shakespeare, and everybody guess what Shakespeare you're quoting from.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, let's call it Good Old Boy Theater. And he said, yes. So we get on the air the next day.
Oh, wow.
And with about 30 seconds left in the commercial break, because they weren't very long because they weren't selling any commercials,
Right.
it just hit me the way he talked.
It'd be perfect.
I said, you should do it. And I literally slid it across the table in that little studio that you came up to.
Yeah.
And he picks it up and looks at it. And I do that whole introduction that he is a connoisseur. And I said, so Bill Bubba Bussey with this edition of Good Old Boy Theater. And he goes, Romero, Romero. And a star was born. And so the audience went crazy over it. And then an advertiser wanted to pay $40 a commercial. And we were selling them for about $15.
Yeah.
To be the sponsor of Good Old Boy Theater.
Wow.
And so we started doing that on a regular basis. He was part-time. He was like a character on the show. And then we'll tell another story. So about the time I've got him as a character, which will be the next thing we can talk about, in walks the new news person, and she's introduced to me, Sherry Bodine.
Oh, well, let's hold on to that.
Yeah.
Can we come back to that?
Yeah, and so we'll tell that story in a minute. So anyway, so I go to the general manager after the end of the first year of Bubba being a character, and I said, when we come back in 94, I said, we'll trash the morning extravaganza, and I said, we'll open up with a new show, The Rick and Bubba Show.
Wow.
And that general manager said, you're going to hire the engineer to be your co-host, and you're going to share time with him? And he goes, oh, man, he's just a character. I think that's a mistake. And he goes, now what am I supposed to do for an engineer? And I said, I'll tell you what. I said, you cut my salary back about enough to get you a part-time engineer. I said, because this investment I'm making in this, I said, you're going to pay us more money by the time we get to the end of the first year.
Come on.
And so in 94, we came back and did the very first ever Rick and Bubba Show.
And there you go. There you have it. How about that, folks?
Yeah.
I mean, right here on Everybody's Talking with Kevin Derryberry, we're getting all the good stuff. So my guest is Rick Burgess. As you know, we're going to take a little break. Y'all don't go anywhere. This is Everybody's Talking with Kevin Derryberry, a Seraphic Sound Studio podcast.